Ladies and gentlemen, we did it. We survived all 82 games of the absolute worst and most miserable Sixers season in existence. We saw players we did not know existed and ended up rooting against this team by the end of the season, but the bottom line is the 82 games are in the books. Perhaps more notably, Daryl Morey did step up and face the media for the first time in quite a long time since right after the trade deadline, where he declared that if you squint, you can still see a championship contender. So I think that is the more important story today. But to briefly touch on the game before I shift into some of the overall takeaways, do want to give you guys a heads up that I want to pretty much one through one go through this team, talk about should this guy get back, what the outlook is, the contractual side of things, all these kind of conversations I do want to get to. So there's going to be a lot coming in the next few weeks, so stay tuned for all that. But do want to keep it in tune with kind of the story of today. So it was the 82nd game of the season, a 122-102 victory by the Bulls. Not a ton to take away here. The only guy that I did want to highlight was Lonnie Walker the fourth here. Played 37 minutes, finished with 31 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists, shot 11 for 23 from the field overall, 8 for 15 from beyond the three-point arc. That was a career high for Lonnie there, and I think that was a great way to end the season for him specifically. It wasn't this smooth sailing since Lonnie Walker came back to America and got that NBA deal again. He has had his struggles. He has had his ups and downs, so I do think it was nice for him to kind of end on a high note there. Now, to talk about the Sixers overall, for starters, I do think it is hilarious that since that fateful you just squint and you can see a championship contender, these Sixers went 4-28. It is difficult to lose more games than that, even if they were specifically trying, which they essentially have been for the core of the season. And on that note right there, to be clear, none of the guys on the court actually had any intentions of losing. It's an organizational decision that it's things like, hey, Paul George is not playing anymore. Yep, Joel Embiid is shut down for the year, even though that's kind of a separate conversation. Moments like, Gershon Yabusele's knee is sort of he won't be here. That is how the job was executed down the stretch. And we are locked in to the fifth worst record, fifth best lottery odds there. That is going to be a very fateful day for this Sixers team. We're going to know a lot more from the specifics conversation, most specifically with the salary cap and a lot like that, with what the outlook is based on where that draft pick falls. If they lose their pick completely, quite different outlook than if they get the one pick. And the same if it does fall at 6, at 3. There are different salary numbers assigned to each of those draft picks, which do change up the kind of cap perspective a little bit there. But the bottom line is what should be viewed as a win for the Sixers team is just retaining the pick and having a chance to add a young talent. Now, to reflect on this team that we currently have in front of us, I do want to highlight a couple portions of what Daryl Morey stated. Now, I did sit through the whole press conference there. Again, I have a lot to dive into there. My number one takeaway is I do think it was cool to see Morey basically wear it on the chin, to take ownership. He was a failure this year. This team was a failure this year, and he essentially said that as so. The number one quote that I did want to jump into is in his opening statement. He said, quote, "For me personally, it is obviously the toughest season of my career, and I'll just say personally, I will spend every waking hour figuring out how to turn this team around going into next season." Mentioned his appreciation for ownership giving him the assets to build a championship contender previously, and ultimately the job was not done there. I do think when we talk about the Sixers team at times, and Daryl Morey specifically is a dude that we kind of chase pitchforks and are ready to run out of the city in certain moments there, it is important to remember that this was a miserable year for every single party involved, that no one wanted things to go this way. Daryl Morey included, Nick Nurse included, Joel Embiid included. It was a disaster on every single front there. Now, nonetheless, responsibility still has to fall for that. It is rare that there is a season that goes as off the rails as this specific year did, and there are no repercussions or no notable changes, but that does seem to be the pathway that we are heading down. That it was confirmed that Daryl Morey and Nick Nurse will each be back next year, and dive into a little bit on that here. That I did want to pull up this quote here. Actually, they are kind of committing to this big three plan moving forward as well. Daryl Morey speaks his confidence into Tyrese Maxey, Paul George, and Joel Embiid as a trio. Quote, "We feel good about those three guys. Our three all-stars moving forward. I have to do a better job of putting a better supporting cast around them." Says they will for sure be younger and more dynamic next season. That was one of the takeaways that Morey did hit on a couple times, that they are going to be younger. They are going to be more athletic. It isn't going to be as veteran-centric as was the case this season. And Morey sort of spoke up and apologized to that he said through his view, the way that he looked at it, is he wanted playoff-proven players. And what he overlooked in the process is the pathway to actually getting to the playoffs. There is a fair argument to be had that having the guys like Eric Gordon there, who have such a comprehensive playoff experience and resume there, that they can be more impactful than one of these young guards that you have not seen yet. but they didn't even get to that point. And that is kind of the advantage of young players, is they are a little bit of the innings eaters, that you throw them out there, they're going to get the job done. They will get you through those random Tuesdays and Wednesdays and Thursdays in the NBA where no one's really paying attention that closely there. So it is kind of a balancing act that you do have to fight, and Morey clearly did not strike the right chord with that. Now, my biggest takeaway, I have two different directions I want to go here. For starters, yes, it is true that injuries derailed the season. There is no way around this. We saw 15 total games of Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, and Paul George on the court together. The Sixers broke an NBA record for having the most unique starting lineups in league history. Never once in the history of the NBA has there been a team to roll out more different starting lineups than the Philadelphia 76ers this year. But it is not just that. There still has to be takeaways from this season, that you cannot just scrap this, throw this in the trash, run it back, and start next year. There are things to be taken away. And as a little bit of an evidence to that, shout out to the rights to Ricky Sanchez, Mike O'Connor here, who tweeted out these stats, saying exactly as far as that through March 4th, which was the last game that any of Embiid, Maxey, or Paul George played, the Sixers ranked 24th in offensive rating. In that stretch since March 4th, they ranked 23rd in offensive rating. The tanking squad offense has been the same as the non-tanking squad's offense. And that is what I want to make clear here, is even before the plug was fully pulled on the season, even when it was official that the destiny was this team needs to lose as much as possible and maximize their chances of trading that draft pick, it was already bad. This team was already a tough watch. That with Joel Embiid on the floor, with Paul George on the floor, with Tyrese Maxey on the floor in those brief instances that we did see that it still wasn't good basketball. There still was this stagnant offensive approach. It was these guys playing too much hero ball for stretches. All that needs to be factored in as you move to next year. Now, with all that being said, I understand why they basically got to run it back. That you can't, as an organization, look at how much money is invested, how much this game plan was committed to building to this specific moment to have the 3 stars, and just chalk it after you had 15 chances looking at them. And by the way, in those 15 chances, we're talking about Joel Embiid missing a game because he got hit in the face or whatever against the Pacers there. Paul George leaving multiple of those games there. Tyrese Maxey playing through some pain this year. There's not even a clean sample size in that brief 15 kind of games there. Now, I did want to circle back to Tyrese Maxey, which I do not want to overlook as a bigger story of this season. We've talked plenty about the injury status with Joel Embiid. We've talked about Paul George, his underwhelming contract, these stats that have come along with it. But I do think the weight of the world sort of set in on Tyrese Maxey in a little different way. One of the things that I really noticed in this press conference, Nick Nurse went out of his way to praise Tyrese Maxey on every single chance that he's gotten. That was clearly a point of emphasis, and one quote that I did want to highlight here with Maxey specifically is Nick Nurse is asked about Tyrese Maxey's season and states, "I have zero worries about him. He's heading in this direction," as he kind of pointed up, "and he's not even close to where he's going to get to." Mentioned what a frustrating season it was for Maxey for just about all angles, and also pointed out to the leap that he's taken defensively these past 2 seasons. And while we're bogged down in all the talking points that I just mentioned with Embiid, with Paul George, etc., it's basically been Tyrese Maxey having to go to war by himself on the actual floor. That for a lot of the season, it was Maxey and whoever else was around him. We didn't even know on some nights. He didn't play much with Quentin Grimes. We saw kind of all these rotating names that did go through, and it was hard. And we kind of all noticed this whole season, that he did not carry himself with that same joy or the expression. Nick Nurse really theorized that coming into the season, that he felt that way the same at training camp. And then when the year started and it got derailed pretty quickly, it all kind of sunk in on Maxey. So these years happen, not usually to this extent. This is certainly one of the higher, more frustrating points in that scale there. But you got to find a way to wipe it away, clean slate, and move forward next year. This was not all bad by Tyrese Maxey this season. There was that stretch where he was unbelievable during the midpoint of the season, looked terrific, averaging 30+, showing signs as a playmaker. A guy that, this is not just a pure bad basketball season, but I do think it kind of is a pure bad mental season. So for Tyrese Maxey specifically, as he's in the first year of his max contract, I do hope this is a summer where he takes some time away, decompresses, obviously takes care of the hand issue and what he's battling from a physical standpoint, and just kind of relax and turn a page. Because I do have a lot of sympathy for what the outlook has been for Maxey specifically, and I am confident that they are heading in the right direction with him specifically moving forward. So a lot more to get into from the offseason perspective, but do want to get your guys' thoughts on each of those statements there. What is your ultimate feeling? And the number one question I want to ask is, what's your ultimate vibe check on Nick Nurse and Daryl Morey coming back specifically here? Personally, I get it. For both guys, I have a hard time holding them down to the fire from the stance of, from Nick Nurse specifically. What are you going to do when all these guys are injured? It is true. There's no way around that. And for Daryl Morey, you got to take the hits with the misses. The Jared McCains, the Tyrese Maxeys, at trading for Quentin Grimes, who they plan on retaining, signing Gershon Yabusele, which was a home run minimum contract. There's a lot that is in his favor as well. And I do think that this is a rare occasion in which they could all come out moving forward better next year when it is put together. But do want to hear your thoughts on that, them specifically being back. Your thoughts below. As always, make sure you guys are hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like on this video here, and I'll be back talking to you next time right here on Sixers Digest. Peace.